once again in beautiful Vancouver, Canada, working on the RZ500 video series. When I started this video series, I joined several Facebook groups so that I could post my videos on those groups and get people to start subscribing to my YouTube channel, which is Eastside Restorations. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you very much. And one of the groups that I joined was Yamaha RZV 500 Owners Group. And this group is run by a gentleman named Bill Wilson. And when I joined the group, Bill has a small questionnaire that you have to fill out before you can become a member. And the main question on that questionnaire is, why do you want to be a member of this group? And I replied, for shared information among like-minded people. So I wasn't even a member for 2 days, and I had posted my video on Bill's group, and Bill contacts me and says, hey, I see you're building an 86. I have some great advice for you on the upper crank seal that you can no longer get. And at this time, I had looked already for this seal and couldn't find it anywhere on the planet. And so he said, here's my phone number. Give me a call when you got a chance and we can chat about it. I was blown away. This is exactly what the internet is supposed to be for. Remember when it started? It was about sharing information. This was fantastic. I couldn't believe it. I called Bill. He gave me an excellent idea of how to solve the problem of the fact that the upper crank seal on the 86 is no longer available anywhere. And he gave me an idea for machining a couple of aluminum collars to fit another seal. And we're gonna go over that in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you, Bill Wilson, for the advice and also for creating the group that you did. And also everyone else that has created a group out there to help maintain the history of this fantastic motorcycle and to help its legacy move forward in the future. I say thank you very much, and let's keep it going. Let's keep sharing information. Let's keep having fun with this iconic motorcycle. And with that, let's move on to exactly what Bill gave me and how happy I am about it. All right, here we go. Hey folks, here we are with a description of what I was talking about. Here is a 1986 Canadian model engine case and 1986 Canadian model crankshafts. Now, these are different from my 1985, which I just rebuilt a year and a half ago, in the fact that my 85 does not have this part of the lower or the upper crankshaft. It's just a blank end right where the bearing ends, right here, and there's no seal in the crankcase. There's just a blanking cap. The same as this one for the balance shaft, but it's for the upper crankshaft and it sits right here. Now, the reason that Yamaha did this was they received some complaints that there was vibration coming through the foot pegs on the RZ500. And whoa, who'd have guessed that you'd have a little vibration in the foot pegs on a 500cc two-stroke? So Yamaha went to all of this trouble to fix this vibration, and here was their fix. They decided to extend the crankshaft on the upper crank and put a balance weight on here to counter the balance shaft that was already in there. And as a result, they were forced to have a seal made. I can find this seal online with these dimensions. You can see it's a 25-47-8. Those are the dimensions of the seal. But it doesn't have this rib that fits in the groove of the crankcase that prevents the seal from being blown out when there's pressure inside the crank. So you have to have that rib on the seal, and it's completely unavailable. Here on the screen is the letter that I got from the Arai Seal Company. So it is completely unavailable, but luckily, like I mentioned, Bill Wilson gave me a great idea on how to solve this problem. And the way to solve it is to, well, first of all, you look at the lower crank on the stator side, the shaft is the exact same diameter. So this seal and this seal that's no longer available have the same inside diameter. So if we can find a way to collar this up and make it this diameter, we can use this seal. This is a brand new extra one that I bought just for this reason. And this is the old one that came off of this side of the crankshaft. Now this old one I've already tested in the idea that I have modified a little bit from Bill's idea. Now Bill's idea was brilliant. It's to take this seal, and he machined 2 collars, and you can see on the screen there's a diagram of what he did. He machined 2 collars that fit into this groove perfectly and sandwich this seal so that this rib won't allow the seal to move in or out. Then of course the aluminum collar takes up that extra space. So I wanted to modify that a little bit and make it an easier installation. So I came up with the idea of doing it, and I'm sure Bill thought of this as well, making it a single collar. And you can see that I am duplicating this seal in aluminum so that I can then fit this seal, a new one, into this aluminum casing. I'm going to cut a groove for this rib, and then I'm going to taper one side so that I can press the seal in, and hopefully the rib will collapse enough that it will snap right into the groove. So here we have it sitting in the crankcase, and it fits perfectly into the groove. And I've already taken the upper crankcase, put it down on top with the collar in place and a piece of printing paper between the two. And you can't pull that printing paper out when the 2 cases are down and closed together. And at the same time, this does not spin freely. So our size is perfect. So then, the problem becomes, how do you install that seal into that collar without tearing the rib off? Because as we know, the rib is essential. So what I did was I cut a 45-degree angle on the inside that stops just before the groove. And that's enough when you place the seal in there. And I'm going to use some Yamaha Bond as lubricant, because it's, you know, it's quite slippery when it's still in its liquid form. So if you do it quickly, you can just cover the outside of the seal in Yamaha Bond. You can see that the inside diameter fits perfect. And when you press it in, the 45-degree angle that's cut in there is enough to compress that rib until it pops into the groove. Now, I've tried it with the old seal. This old seal was in that collar and pressed back out, and the rib is still intact all the way around. It worked perfectly. And also, when it was installed in the collar, I had the collar in the case, put the crankshaft in, and the lips of the seal land almost exactly where they do from the factory. So it worked out, and that was the first machining attempt. So I was really, really happy, and I think it's going to work wonderful. And of course, we'll put some Yamaha Bond on the outside of that ring when it gets installed, and we'll have a beautiful seal on there. Apparently, there are only 150 of these models made. So yeah, it's quite the rare machine because of this fact. And it'll be fun to ride my 85 and then ride this 86 and see if there really is any difference in the vibration. Who knows? We'll do a whole video on that. All right, I'm gonna put these crankshafts in. And we're going to install this seal into the ring that I've made. So, as I mentioned before, I'm just gonna use this 30mm socket to press it in, which is a perfect fit. So we have the bearing, or the seal I should say, on the 45-degree angle cut side. And we're going to use some Honda Bond as a lubricant that will then become a bonding agent. So we're going to go all the way around this seal, get a nice coat of the Honda Bond. All right. Did you see how it just popped into the groove? You can see it's flush all the way around. Same thing on this side. Just wipe some of that bond into there. And then I'm just going to clean up the outside edges a little bit. We're ready to go. So now, you might be asking yourself, should I put some Yamaha Bond where the seal goes? Or should I put some Yamaha Bond where the bearing goes? The answer is no. Don't put any Yamaha Bond where any of the bearing surface is. Don't put it on the seal. The seal is going to do its job perfectly without any kind of adhesive on it. So keep the Yamaha Bond, or the Honda Bond as it were, away from there. However, in this case, we are going to use some where we're putting this aluminum to aluminum. Slide it onto our crankshaft. And then we're going to take this crankshaft. Make sure that your locator pins are up and don't get pinched. Double check and make sure that your bearing anchor is there. And gently lower that down. Make sure that the groove of this seal is in the groove of the crankcase. And on this side, of course, let me turn this back around. We are going to install this balance shaft. And as you can see, there is a mark right here in the center of this cog of this gear. We want to line that up with this mark that's in between two cogs so that the two marks line up together. Like that. So you can see the mark on this crankshaft and you can see the mark on this balance shaft, and the two of them mesh. And there is also a small locator pin on this other bearing as well. Make sure it doesn't get tucked underneath when you're installing. And the same thing with this one. So now we have our balance shaft installed and our timing marks line up. This is just a timing mark for the balance shaft so that it is in the correct position in relation to the two crankshafts. So then we're going to put our other crankshaft in. And this crankshaft, again, make sure your locator pins are up. Make sure that the seals are in the grooves of the crankcases. Make sure your locator pins are rolled down and into the proper position. And make sure that your bearing anchors are down inside this lower half of the crankcase. So all of our seals are correctly installed and they are all sitting in the grooves of the crankcase. The last thing is the cap for the back of the balance shaft. And now we can lower this upper crankcase down on. And be careful when you're doing this that you don't end up with a connecting rod sticking out of one of these